Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes corruption allegations rock Japanese politics. Achievement? Improvement? Here's how Columbus area schools rate in GA and AL report cards. Young Americans are more pro-Palestinian than their elders. Why? China may find cure for stagflation by studying Japan's experience. Chicago man exonerated in 2011 murder case where legally blind eyewitness gave testimony. Corruption allegations rock Japanese politics. BBC. Japan is currently experiencing a major political crisis as the government grapples with a corruption scandal that has led to the resignation of 4 cabinet ministers. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is fighting to hold on to power as his approval ratings plummet to a historic low of 17%. The scandal involves allegations that politicians from the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, pocketed excess funds received at fundraisers. The largest group within the LDP, the Abe faction, has been accused of hiding at least 500 million yen, £2.7 million, $3.5 million, potentially more. Prosecutors have raided the offices of the Abe Group and other leading LDP factions in connection with the investigation. The scandal has led to public anger and outrage, particularly on social media. Some hope that this could be a turning point for governance reforms, while others argue that the scandal is merely the latest in a long line of similar incidents involving the LDP, which has ruled Japan almost continuously since 1955. Analysts believe that the crisis is unlikely to lead to profound reform or a breakdown of the LDP, as many within the party benefit from the existing system of political funding. Achievement? Improvement? Here's how Columbus area schools rate in GA and AL report cards. Yahoo! Both Georgia and Alabama have released their public school district report cards for 2023. Georgia's College and Career Ready Performance Index, CCRPI, now reports 100-point scale scores for each of its 5 components: content mastery, progress, closing gaps, readiness, and graduation rate. Alabama's State Department of Education's report card still uses an overall score on a 100-point scale to describe the performance of its schools and districts, and is made up of the following components: academic achievement, academic growth, graduation rate, college and career readiness, chronic absenteeism, and progress in English language proficiency. In the Muskogee County School District, the scores for each of the 4 CCRPI components were below the state average. In the Harris County School District, scores for the first 3 CCRPI components were above the state average. In the Chattahoochee County School District, scores for readiness and content mastery were above the state average. In the Phoenix City School District, scores for all 11 schools were above the state average. In the Russell County School District, scores for only 2 of its 7 schools were above the state average. In the Lee County School District, scores for only 1 of its 14 schools were above the state average. Young Americans are more pro-Palestinian than their elders. Why? Washington Post. Age plays a significant role in shaping Americans' views on Israel and its relationship with Palestinians, according to a report by the Washington Post. The report highlights a generational difference between older Americans who view Israel as a vital refuge for Jews and younger Americans who sympathize more with Palestinians. The younger generation has formed its idea of Israel from reports of Palestinians being denied water, freedom of movement, and fair trials, under the military control of a relatively rich, nuclear-armed Israel. Younger Americans are also more likely to conceptualize the Palestinian cause as a sister issue to U.S. efforts for racial justice, as they see visual parallels between the situation in occupied territories and majority black neighborhoods in the U.S. The rise of social media and new forms of media consumption have also facilitated access to different perspectives, allowing traditionally underrepresented groups to reach a wider audience and shape public opinion. Social media platforms like TikTok have been criticized for appearing to favor pro-Palestinian content, but the company says this is because of organic user preferences rather than algorithm manipulation. China may find cure for stagflation by studying Japan's experience. Nikkei Asia. Japan's experience with prolonged deflation may offer lessons to China as it faces similar challenges, according to analysts. China, the world's second-largest economy, is currently grappling with mounting debt, an aging workforce, and deflation. To avoid a debt deflation spiral, Chinese policymakers must act quickly and decisively, and avoid the hesitations and repeated wavering in monetary policy that Japan experienced. Japan's slow response to its plunge into stagflation, as well as institutional, legal, and cultural obstacles that delayed taking action, prolonged its period of zero growth. Japan's economy suffered from sluggish growth and recession since the early 1990s, but it maintained its status as a highly developed economy and avoided the middle-income trap. The country's experience raises the question of whether pursuing different monetary policies or adjusting policies sooner could have prevented years of zero growth. China must resist the head-in-the-sand mentality that Japan had and be decisive in implementing policies to address its challenges. Japan's experience also provides insights into its government spending and efforts to address weak demand. Increased government debt in Japan promoted output growth and employment without leading to inflation or threatening the government's credit. China's fiscal expansion should focus on spending effectively in areas such as education, healthcare, elderly care, and benefits for migrant workers to alleviate concerns and encourage consumption and investment. China has the advantage of efficiency in its decision-making process compared to Japan, but it must ensure that policies are decisive and complementary to avoid worsening problems. Chicago man exonerated in 2011 murder case where legally blind eyewitness gave testimony. Associated Press. Darian Harris has been released from an Illinois prison after spending more than 12 years behind bars for murder, partly based on evidence from a legally blind eyewitness. The case is one of 12 exonerations this year in Cook County, Chicago, with many defendants represented by attorneys from the Exoneration Project. In total, more than 200 people have been exonerated through the group's work. Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox said 237 convictions linked to former police officer Ronald Watts had been vacated in recent years. UNC Greensboro rolls to record-setting win over Virginia Lynchburg. Associated Press. UNC Greensboro set several program records in their 135-57 victory over Virginia Lynchburg. The Spartans set records for the most points scored in a game, largest margin of victory, halftime lead, field goals made, and rebounds. 8 players reached double figures in scoring for UNC Greensboro. Donovan Atwell led the team with 19 points, followed by Domes Cazonas with 18 points and Jalen Breath and Keyshawn Langley with 17 points each. Marcus Brown scored 21 points for Virginia Lynchburg. Pacific storm that unleashed flooding barreling down on southeastern California. Associated Press. A Pacific storm has caused heavy rain and flooding in California and is poised to move to the southeastern area of the state, the Mojave Desert and parts of Arizona. The National Weather Service has issued flood watches for low-lying urban areas and the deserts. There are concerns that some areas could receive a half-inch to an inch of rain in just an hour, causing rivers and creeks to overflow. Rules aimed at long-contaminated groundwater drive California farmers and residents to court. Associated Press. The San Gerardo Cooperative in rural California, which is home to around 300 residents, has sued the state over groundwater contamination caused by nitrates. The residents allege that large-scale farming has polluted the groundwater with nitrogen from fertilizers. The cooperative, in conjunction with environmental organizations, has demanded stricter regulations on the use of fertilizers in order to ensure that future generations have clean water. Nitrogen is essential as a fertilizer for plants, but it can also contaminate water supplies. Despite efforts to address the issue, researchers believe the problem will persist for decades. The state's water quality control boards were intended to address the issue, but the state board has argued that more consistent standards and scientific review are needed. The cooperative and environmental groups have taken the state to court over this decision. Farmers have also taken legal action, arguing that the changes would have a detrimental effect on the food supply. The fight to keep counting the dead in Gaza. The Sydney Morning Herald. The death toll in Gaza is becoming increasingly difficult to compile as most hospitals are closed, hundreds of doctors and health workers have been killed, and communications are hampered by lack of fuel and electricity. The Gaza Health Ministry's figures have drawn international attention to the high number of civilians being killed in the Israeli military's offensive launched after Hamas' October 7 attack on Israel. However, with the collapse of communications services and other infrastructure due to the Israeli offensive, the ministry has said it was unable to collect regular reports from morgues at hospitals in northern Gaza, and thousands more dead are believed to remain buried beneath the rubble. The World Health Organization, WHO, believes the ministry's tally may be an undercount as it only includes those who have been identified or claimed by relatives. The WHO and other experts said it was not possible for now to determine the extent of any undercounting. Day of mourning declared after 14 killed in Prague mass shooting. Al Jazeera. The Czech Republic has declared a day of mourning after a 24-year-old student shot dead his father, before killing 14 people and wounding 25 others at his Prague University in the country's worst-ever mass shooting. Gun crime is relatively rare in the Czech Republic. San Diego State pulls away from Stanford, readies for stiffest test yet against number 15 Gonzaga. Associated Press. San Diego State defeated Stanford with a score of 74-60. Lamont Butler and Jaden Leddy led the Aztecs with 18 and 16 points, respectively. San Diego State improved to 10-2 for the season and will face number 15 Gonzaga on December 29. Stanford's Massim Reynaud scored 15 points, Michael Jones scored 14, and Brandon Angel scored 10. This was only the third time that Stanford played against San Diego State in San Diego, and the first time since the 1997-98 season. Stanford is now 4-2 all-time against San Diego State. Cook gets first start, leads LSU to 87-66 win over Lamar. Associated Press. Jalen Cook scored 17 points to lead LSU to an 87-66 victory over Lamar. Cook, who returned to LSU as a transfer from Tulane, was initially ruled ineligible for the season by the NCAA. However, a U.S. district judge issued a temporary restraining order against the NCAA, allowing Cook to play immediately. In his second game back, Cook scored 10 points and dished 3 assists in the first half as LSU built a 45-26 lead. Jordan Wright added 15 points for LSU, while Joshawn Jackson and Jakevian Buckley each scored 14 points off the bench for Lamar. Dramatic scenes as students leap from windows, hide in classrooms to escape Prague University shooter. ABC. A gunman opened fire at a university in Prague, Czech Republic, resulting in the deaths of at least 8 people, including the shooter. Students were caught on film attempting to flee the building, with some jumping out of windows and others hiding inside. Police discovered a large arsenal of weapons at the university and were tipped off about the suspect's intentions earlier in the day. The shooter was suspected to have killed another man and his daughter prior to the university shooting. Gun crime is relatively rare in Czechia, despite there being a large number of registered firearms in the country. Macquarie Harbor oxygenation trial hoped to save endangered skate. ABC. The salmon farming industry and the Australian federal government have joined forces to fund a trial of nano-bubbles in Tasmania's Macquarie Harbour. The trial aims to increase oxygen levels in the harbour in order to save the Maugean skate from extinction. Starting next month, a diesel generator on a barge will draw up low-oxygen water, fill it with concentrated bubbles of oxygen, and then pump it back into the harbour at a depth of 30 to 40 meters. The 2-year $7 million trial will be overseen by the University of Tasmania's Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies. Anthony Hopkins on the hero who saved children from Nazis. BBC. British actor Sir Anthony Hopkins is set to play the role of Sir Nicholas Winton in the film One Life, which tells the story of Winton's work in saving 669 children from the Nazis during World War II. Winton organized the Kindertransport trains which brought Jewish children out of Czechoslovakia before the war began. He did not consider himself a hero and never spoke about his actions until 1988 when his story appeared on the BBC's That's Life program. The film recreates the moment when survivors who had been saved by Winton were brought together and asked to stand if they owed their life to him. Actor Johnny Flynn, who plays the young Winton in the film, has said that Winton felt deep shame about the fact that only 2 of the 250 children on the last train organized by Winton are believed to have survived the war. However, it is thought that around 6,000 people are alive today because of what Winton and other volunteers achieved. Winton died in 2015 at the age of 106. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest news from all corners of the globe. Let's dive right into today's stories. First, we have corruption allegations rocking Japanese politics. It seems that the ruling Liberal Democratic Party has been caught up in a scandal involving pocketing excess funds from fundraisers. This has led to the resignation of 4 cabinet ministers and a historic drop in Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's approval ratings. While some hope that this scandal will lead to governance reforms, others believe it's just another incident in a long line of corruption within the LDP. As an observer, I can't help but wonder if this will be a turning point or just business as usual for Japanese politics. Moving on to education, both Georgia and Alabama have released their public school district report cards for 2023. The scores are in, and it seems that the Muskogee County School District in Georgia and the Harris County School District in Alabama are performing above the state average in some areas. However, there is still room for improvement in other districts. As an observer, I'm always interested in seeing how our education systems are doing and how we can strive for better outcomes for our students. Now let's talk about a generational divide in the United States. A report by the Washington Post reveals that younger Americans have a more pro-Palestinian stance compared to their elders. This is due to a variety of factors, including social media, access to different perspectives, and a connection between the Palestinian cause and U.S. efforts for racial justice. It's fascinating to see how different generations perceive the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and how their experiences shape their views. Next, we have China looking to learn from Japan's experience with deflation. China is facing similar challenges, such as mounting debt and an aging workforce, and analysts believe that quick and decisive action is necessary to avoid a debt deflation spiral. Japan's slow response to its own economic crisis is seen as a cautionary tale, and China must be proactive in implementing policies to address its challenges. As an observer, I find it interesting how countries can learn from each other's experiences and adapt their strategies accordingly. In other news, we have a case of wrongful conviction in the U.S. Darian Harris has been released from an Illinois prison after spending over 12 years behind bars for murder, partly based on evidence from a legally blind eyewitness. This is one of 12 exonerations this year in Cook County, Chicago, highlighting the importance of continued efforts to ensure justice is served. It's a reminder that our justice system is not infallible and that we must always strive for truth and fairness. Lastly, we have a dramatic scene unfolding in Gaza. The death toll is rising, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep track of the casualties due to the destruction of infrastructure and lack of communication. The World Health Organization believes that the official numbers may be an undercount, highlighting the challenges faced by those trying to document the true extent of the tragedy. As an observer, it's heartbreaking to see the human toll of conflict and the struggles faced by those trying to bring attention to the situation. That wraps up today's news. Now it's time for you, my dear viewers, to share your thoughts. What do you make of the corruption scandal in Japanese politics? How do you think education can be improved in your area? How do you see the generational divide on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And what are your thoughts on the situation in Gaza? I'm excited to hear your perspectives and engage in a lively discussion. Remember, in the 6 Degrees world, every opinion matters. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.